Ranked #1 in innovation 11 consecutive years, Arizona State University isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Learn from notable clinical and research faculty. Online, that's a degree better. Explore programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
The McDonald's Snack Wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch Snack Wrap. Spicy Snack Wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack Wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends in Mr. Tanner Kern. He does such great work over at DraftKings. We're going to be chatting with him about how the top of college basketball, those top teams, have separated themselves from the rest. We're going to be taking a look at the dynamics of conference play, what he's all made out of the first 2 months of the season. We'll dive in on a few games for Monday, looking at teams that maybe have overachieved and underachieved as well. And then in the final segment, gonna get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_d1. Keep in mind, there's EM. Name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. Everything is powered by Better. That is BETR on Better, is making it all the better to be able to dive in on some daily fantasy. I know that with going to BETR.app and type in the promo code of VSINPOD, VSINPOD, that also gets you $10 free to be able to get started as well. All you need to do is take a look at a player's stat line, determine whether or not they're going to go over or under it, and you're all good to go there. And additionally, where jurisdictions have money lines and spreads, you're able to bet on those as well. So that's always a lot of fun, and it is always a lot of fun to take a look at everything that we're getting in college basketball. Let's take a look at what we all got on Monday, try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Quite a few ranked teams in action on Monday, and for Michigan, they just continue to truck along. How about 112-71 over McNeese? Cover the number very easily. They were up 60-29 at the half. And for Michigan, it sounded like they had some sort of an expose from three-point range. They go just 7-23 from three, but they're able to manhandle down low. They win the rebound battle 55-32. They actually lose the turnover battle 15-9, but you know what? That's offset by Morris Johnson giving you 24 points, 11 rebounds. You had a pair of guys, Trey McKinney and Roddy Gale, off the bench combined for 23 points, 12 rebounds. So just utter domination here from Michigan. They are the number 1 team in all of college basketball, and they continue to cover these very, very large numbers, much like they were able to do on Monday. Iowa State does not cover against Eastern Christian. They were laying a boatload of points, and it was a little bit tight in the first half, 41-28. They pull away in the second half, 89-61 being the final. As for Eastern Christian, they actually did a very solid job in terms of being able to hold in there in the turnover battle in the first half. Second half, things got a little bit more overwhelming. Houston Christian has 14 turnovers to Iowa State's 9, and for Iowa State, they absolutely plowed on the glass. 44-18, they win the rebound battles. Blake Buchanan, 16 points, 11 rebounds, double-double, led the way. And Tamon Lipsby, a little bit of an off-game scoring with only 8 points, but 8 assists, 7 rebounds, and then Joshua Jefferson just continues to do it all. 23 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. He went 12 of 16 at the free throw line, so no cover for Iowa State, but nice, easy win for them. For Vanderbilt, in a lot of cases, they did end up covering this number against New Haven. This depended upon your closing number, but for Vanderbilt, just absolute domination here. They're able to win by a count of 96-53. This was a closing number in a lot of places of right around about 39.5, so should have been able to get there. And for Vanderbilt, 11-24 from three-point range. First game without Frankie Collins, who's currently out with a torn meniscus, but Tyler Tanner stepped up in a big way, 23 points, 5 boards, 7 assists. Jalen Washington off the bench, 11 points. And for New Haven, they lost the rebound battle 41-22. New Haven goes just 2 of 15 from three-point range. It's a Division I team, very, very rudely greeted to facing off against an SEC team, but this SEC team did not cover. Georgia, they get the win, but no cover against Long Island. This by a count of 89-74. And for Long Island, they actually led 44-41 at the half. Georgia, a little bit better from 3-point range, 11 of 27 from the outside, and it was mainly the reserves that did it. Marcus Milliner, 3 of 4 from 3 for 14 points. Justin Bailey, 13 points, 3 of 5 from 3. That was your top two scorers for Georgia. Won the rebound battle 40-38, but they actually were able to do a relatively solid job of getting to the free throw line as well, 21 of 29 at the free throw line. They do edge out the turnover battle as well, 16-13, but Greg Gecko Gordon, 20 points for Long Island. That was able to help you get a nice quality cover out there for Arizona. They get the job done against South Dakota State, this by kind of 99-71. Now, this was another larger spread. They were laying about 30.5 points, so not quite able to get there, but still nice solid performance here from Arizona as Koa Pete, double-double, 19 points, 14 rebounds, and you had Jaden Bradley chip in there a double-double as well with 13 points and 10 assists. Now for Arizona, they played even up with regards to turnover battle, 14-14, and for South Dakota State, it was Kellen Gary who was able to help you get that cover. He supplied the team with 20 points, so yay verily for the Jackrabbits being able to make you some money. And for Florida, they were laying over 30 points. They don't cover this number, but pretty convincing win. They were up 53-27 at the half, actually got outscored 45-41 in the second half, but 94-72 the final. And for Florida, they won the rebound battle 60-24. What's really ailing Florida right now is the 3-point shooting, 5 of 18 from the outside. Urban Klavsar has actually been your top 3-point shooter for Florida. He had 12 points off the bench, made a pair of threes, and for Dartmouth, they do get the cover thanks to going 12 of 27 from 3-point range, but for Florida, you also had a double-double of Ruben Ginyelu, 13 points, 12 rebounds, and Florida, they did lose the turnover battle 12-10, but a little bit cleaner in this game as well. Things were very clean for these guys. As for Alabama, 102-78, they take it to Yale. A lot of people thought that Yale might be a little bit plucky in this game. I thought that they would give a better performance than this. They got down 55-31 at the half before they played even a 47-47 in the second half, and Alabama 22 out of 54 from 3-point range, with Latrell Wrightsell going 5 of 15 from 3-point range off the bench. Aiden Holloway, he was able to lead the way, 26 points. He goes 5 of 10 from 3-point range. For Yale, they lose the rebound battle as well, 46-38. Yale does go 9 of 23 from 3-point range, but only induced Alabama into 5 turnovers. So Alabama able to do a nice job keeping things nice, clean, and easy there. And for Arkansas, they do get a nice cover against James Madison, 103-74 the final, as Arkansas goes 15 out of 28 from 3-point range. Malik Thomas off the bench at 28 points with 6 of 10 3-point shooting. Arkansas wins the rebound battle 37-30. They win the turnover battle 14-6, as you had Darius Acuff supplies 6 assists, 17 points. He has been rock solid. DJ Wagner has been a little bit up and down, but he had 14 points, so a nice performance out of Arkansas, and they've been playing a lot of overs recently as well. And Cornell likes to play overs, and Cornell was down 55-53 at the half against Michigan State. Keep in mind, Kentucky and Arkansas were unable to get past 70 points against Michigan State. Cornell puts up 97. Problem is, they also gave up 114 points, but Cornell, nice quality cover, 114-97 the final. Is for Michigan State, they go 13-28 from 3. Cornell 15 out of 44 from the outside, and for Cornell, even up in the turnover battle, 12-12. For Michigan State, you had a double-double out of Jeremy Fierce, 21 points, 11 assists, so no fears there, and Trey Ford off the bench was able to supply the team with 14 points, but hey, how about for Cornell, Cooper Norad being able to give that team 19 points, so Cornell, even in a losing effort, they showed relatively well. Not necessarily such a great showing from Kent State, though. They lose to Purdue 101-60. Kent State has been playing too fast for their own good, and they lost the turnover battle 15-8. They allowed Purdue to go 12-31 from 3, as it was Fletcher Lawyer coming in there for 19 points. Braden Smith, only 12 points, but 8 assists, so he was able to run some good, clean offense, as Jack Benter was actually the top scorer for Purdue in this game. Off the bench, he comes in, he's able to give the team 20 points, and for Illinois, they absolutely took it to Southern in this game, 90-55 the final. Illinois, in a lot of places, it depended upon the number, if you were able to get the cover or not. They were close more around 33-33.5, so should have been able to get there if you laid the points. As for Illinois, you had 11 points apiece out of Tomislav Ivicic, Kenton Wagler, along with David Morosic, and Jake Davis off the bench. 15 points, 5 of 6 from 3-point range. Illinois, 14 out of 34 from 3-point range. Win the rebound battle 45-26 as well. And for Southern, I mean, to their credit, they won the turnover battle 14-8, but yeah, not a lot going on for them, though they did go 6 of 8 at the free throw line. So yay verily there, and yay verily on this one, as well as for Middle Tennessee, a very nice battle given to Houston. Houston just has been not necessarily the same team as we've seen in the past. 69-60 the final, and for Middle Tennessee, they're a relatively good three-point shooting defense. They allowed Houston to only go 6 of 20 from 3, and Middle Tennessee actually won the rebound battle 33-31. Now on the side of Houston was Kingston Flemings, 15 points, 5 assists, and Houston won the turnover battle 19-6. So they're still doing a great job with that regard. But for Middle Tennessee, Kamari Lands, he supplied the team with 18 points, so a relatively good showing there. So you had a lot of ranked teams playing just open match competition. Iowa was another one of those teams, and Iowa doesn't quite cover minus 33.5, but they still get a nice quality win, 90-62. The final is UMass Lowell. They were able to shoot about 48% from the floor to cover. Iowa, they just continue to be very efficient, though. 32 out of 55 from the floor, 22 out of 24 at the free throw line. They won the turnover battle 16-7 as Bennett Sturts supplied the team with 22 points. Again, no cover, but a relatively good performance there. Do have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, so don't have a final in Washington versus Utah, but in terms of some of the unranked games, you had Delaware just absolutely embarrass themselves, 61-43. Your two newcomers to Conference USA. Not a scoring expose in this one, and for Delaware, 15 turnovers, and they had 13 made field goals. That is not great to say the least. Somehow, someway, they knocked off George Washington a few weeks ago, and I'm not quite sure how. And then for Auburn, they absolutely laid it on Queens NC, 106-65. The finals, Queens is really taking it on the chin in some of these games, and for Auburn, you had Kevin Overton really supplied the team with some good scoring, 23 points, and Elijah Freeman off the bench, 27 points. Auburn has been a little bit hot and cold from three-point range. How about 15 out of 28 from 3? And for Auburn, they get 106 points with only getting 5 out of Taj Pettiford. Now, Pettiford also had 9 assists, but that means that players not named Pettiford put up a combined 101 points. Very nice showing there for Minnesota. They completely hold down Fairleigh Dickinson, 60-43 the final. Fairleigh Dickinson lost the second half, by the way, 28-14. Just nothing going for either of these teams. Minnesota 10 of 32 from three-point range. They were able to get a pretty good performance out of Bobby Durkin, who had 19 points. And for Fairleigh Dickinson, 14 turnovers and 14 made field goals, and they went 7-26 from three-point range. This is clearly not your father's Fairleigh Dickinson team. And this team was able to do a much better job with regards to their offense, as you had a nice quality win and cover from Cincinnati, 89-62 the final. So it's been a really bad year for Cincinnati, but 11-29 from three-point range of Bob Miller, 11 points and 21. Got them 21 rebounds in this game, as Cincinnati also won the turnover battle 14-8, and for Lipscomb 11 of 34 from three-point range. So Cincinnati seems to be finding their bearings out there. Nice money line underdog winner on Detroit. They get the job done 73-68 over Youngstown State. Youngstown State just 10 of 38 from three-point range, and Detroit 7 of 15 from three-point range with Orlando Lovejoy 10 of 10 at the charity stripe, 22 points. He came up pretty clutch for them. Rutgers, they get the win, but they do not get the cover against Delaware State, 65-50 the final. We're seeing a lot of unders coming through these last few days with teams coming off a break, and for Rutgers, just 7-27 from 3, but dominated the glass 52-28. They win that rebound battle with Emmanuel Ogbali and Dylan Grant being able to combine for 22 rebounds all by themselves. Iona, a less than tremendous showing as a favorite against Mount St. Mary's, 66-59 the final, and for Iona, 9 of 34 from three-point range. Sloppy game, 16 turnovers out of Mount St. Mary's, 15 for Iona, but for Mount St. Mary's, they overcome shooting just 3 of 17 from three-point range by being able to pound the ball inside, 24 out of 41 on their two-point shots, so a nice money line winner out there. You saw Drexel in a lot of places catching 9.5. They hit a 3 late, and then Charleston had a putback layup with a few seconds remaining, 72-63 the final, so we had some spread implications out there. Elon has been one of your better cover teams in all of college basketball. How about 103-91? They're able to take it to Northeastern as Elon shoots 62% from the floor, 12 of 27 from three-point range, so they're able to do a great job with that regard. And Elon, not quite your best cover team in all of college basketball thus far, but they have been one of those very profitable teams thus far. And if you are taking a look, by the way, at the most profitable team in college basketball with regards to being able to cover the spread, that would actually be Hofstra, and they were able to absolutely lay it on Campbell. They are now 11-1 against against the spread this far this season. And out there in the Coastal Conference, your number 2 team is William and Mary, and they were able to cover as well. For you don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, you get both. 84-70. They lay it on Towson. Towson just 7-25 from 3, and William and Mary 10-24 from 3-point range. William and Mary wins the turnover battle 11-9, and for Towson 9-16 at the free throw line. So William and Mary, a much improved defensive team, they find a way to get the job done. And then in the case of Hofstra, 86-72 Oliver Campbell, and right now Cruz Davis is looking like one of the best mid-major cards in all of college basketball. 22 points, 9-9 at the charity stripe. For Hofstra, they go 11 of 24 from 3-point range. Actually, he did lose the turnover battle in this game, 14-7, but still a very nice quality performance out there. Tarleton State now 9-1 against the spread as well. They were a money line underdog against UT Arlington. They were able to do a nice job getting an outright win by a kind of 69-63, so that was very rock solid. A few other teams that have been very hot against the spread. Portland State 7-1 against the spread. They were not in action on Monday, but we shall see what's going to be happening there. Iowa, who we already went through, they are now 10-3 against the spread, but they've been able to make it quite a bit of good coin as well. And right now, Texas Southern is 1-8 against the spread. They are very much bringing up the rear with Fairleigh Dickinson's cover against Minnesota on Monday. That advanced them to 2-8 against the spread. And for Rider, they're now 2-7-2 against the spread. They have not been profitable for you, and in a lot of cases, they close as a 2.5-point underdog against Manhattan, and Manhattan just barely squeaks that one out. 74-71 the final. As for Manhattan, they go 7-20 from 3-point range. They're still without Will Sidner. Who knows if he's going to be eligible at all this season. And for Manhattan, they lose the rebound battle by kind of 43-40, but they won the turnover battle 12-10. And for Rider, just one of the most deplorable offenses in all of college basketball right now. And additionally, it has not necessarily been the world's greatest year for Rutgers and Florida against the spread at 3-10 against the spread. Went through them. James Madison is out 3-10 against the spread with their non-cover against Arkansas. So you've got some good, you've got some bad, you've got some indifferent right now in all of college basketball. And we are having ourselves a lot of fun. And if you're taking a look trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, overall for the season, it's been nearly 50-50 with regards to overs and unders. 1,042 overs to what should be 1,044 unders with watching the Washington versus Utah game right now. And right now, favorites on the spread hitting at about 50.6%. 1,048, 1,025, and 36 against the spread. And if you're looking at the last 7 days in college basketball, so pretty much one day of college basketball prior to this week, but with everything that's happening with break, about 50-50 with regards to overs and unders. 42 overs, 41 unders, and we've had 2 pushes along the way in favorites, 42, 41, and 2 against the spread, so pretty much 50-50 on that front. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Tanner Kern of DraftKings right here on Cusco Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now a part of the Beats and Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cusco Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Tanner Kern aboard. He does such a great job over at DraftKings, looking at so many different things, whether you're taking a look at college basketball, college football, the NFL, hockey, UFC, you name it, he does it. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Tanner Kern, and then an underscore after that. And Tanner, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Always a pleasure to be here.
Always good to have you aboard. And Tanner, it has been an interesting first 2 or so months of the college basketball season. And how are you gauging things? Because I think the biggest question for me entering into conference play is how to gauge the top teams like Michigan, Purdue, Iowa State in comparison to what they're going to be facing off against, because these teams have just been blowing everyone out of the water and covering some very big spreads.
I'm in the same boat, and really Michigan's the one that I'm looking at. 4-1 to win the national championship right now. As we get into conference play, they're currently sitting at -155 to win the conference, which is pretty lofty at this point in the season, considering, they've had some big out-of-conference wins. Don't get me wrong, beating Auburn, beating Gonzaga, and, handling Gonzaga and handling Auburn for that matter. But that's really the team that I'm looking at. How good are they as you get into a more demanding conference schedule? Maybe don't have the high leverage games like Auburn and Gonzaga on any given night, but you're going to hit stretches where you get Nebraska, Michigan State, and we know, all the athletes in these major conferences too can play on any given night. And when somebody gets hot, anybody can beat anybody. So how are these teams going to respond? Obviously, have a lot of big time players on Michigan, but that's one team that I'm looking at. Are they legit enough to warrant that 4-1 ranking to win the national championship right now?
Yep, and I do think that it's going to be interesting to see what we get in Big Ten play. We're not going to have much of that until Friday, but there are quite a few teams, in my opinion, that have a chance to be able to give them some chase. I don't know if they're going to necessarily be able to knock them off outright, but I look at that Michigan State versus Nebraska game that's going to be coming up on Friday, and I think that those are two of the better competitors of Michigan, and I think that that is going to be a really fun game to see if Nebraska's for real or not, and just to gauge this Michigan State team, because they do seem like that one team that is outside the top five right now that can beat anyone on any given day, given their defense.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State's defense is legitimate, only getting up to 63 points per game. Nebraska's not bad either. The thing about Nebraska is they can score a little bit better, but for the most part, Michigan is just fantastic on defense, really forcing opponents into mistakes on any given night. And I love the way they just move the ball up and down the floor. Jackson Kohler has been really good for them, the 6'9 senior. He's averaging 13 and 10, shooting 52% from the field. Another guy that's defensive minded, but can also score on the offensive end. And this is going to be a big game for Michigan State going on the road to Nebraska. Nebraska's a really good team. Obviously, they have some guys who can play. At the same time, too, I think when we really judge teams in college basketball, how well do you go on the road and win basketball games? Right now, Michigan State 11-1, first really big road test here against Nebraska. So I would lean, obviously, there's a game before that, but I would lean towards Michigan State there. And I think the defense is the reason that they get over the line here.
Yep, and the game before that you're alluding to, Nebraska is going to be playing against New Hampshire on Tuesday. And, well, if they lose to New Hampshire, then we really have some issues with Nebraska. I think that they should be able to get by in that one, so that'll be setting up a big matchup as Tanner Kern, who does such great work over at DraftKings, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And it is a very interesting slate that we've got on Tuesday because we've got a lot of conference play starting up. We've got some nice ACC conference games, Mountain West conference games, and then we have those random non-conference games. We've got Wisconsin versus UW Milwaukee. We've got a few of those oddball games. How do you take a look at a slate like this? Because I do think that with the conference games versus the non-conference games, they just have a completely different dynamic to them.
Yeah, I mean, the ACC game, I'm looking at Florida State versus North Carolina. That's going to be a really fun game. I look at North Carolina, much better basketball team, but how do you handle business against an ACC opponent at home, big time game? Looking at the games that are more, non-conference, it's kind of it's like division games in the NFL. I would say they're always going to be tighter. So look for those spreads in the conference games that are maybe a little tighter. Don't be afraid to potentially lean towards a dog who you might think deserves a few more points than they're getting, but because it's a conference game, that spread's going to be shrunk a little bit. Looking outside the conference, non-conference matchups, I think you handle them as you've handled the first couple weeks of the season or first, month of the season, really, because that's what we've gotten for the most part. And now we're starting to settle into holiday tournaments are coming to an end, right? We're getting into just real basketball games. So, seeing how teams are in this stretch is definitely critical from a betting standpoint because, the holidays are over now. We're out of the one-off Tuesday afternoon games. We're getting into a flow where we're getting some nighttime basketball, which is great too. So that's another thing to pay attention. How do teams handle now when classes are returning and we're getting to a regular schedule?
And I always do love the random day games that we get. We're going to be getting the Vermont versus Princeton game on Tuesday. Those are the games that I personally love. Just get a little bit of a sweat early on during the day. As Tanner Kern, who does such amazing work over at DraftKings, he's joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And there certainly are going to be some interesting games going on Tuesday. And I want to get your thoughts on this game, Seton versus Marquette, because these are two teams that have been exact opposites. For Marquette, many people thought that that they would be like a middle of the road Big East team, maybe not like a supreme team out there in the conference, but they've been a big fat disappointment. And everyone wrote off Seton Hall before the start of the year, thought that they'd be a bottom 2 team in the Big East. They have certainly proven that they are probably not going to be that. And Seton Hall right now, 2.5-point road favorite. How do you take a look at games like this where you've got one team that has been, shall we say, very, very much exceeding expectations, and one team in Marquette that has been the opposite and have fallen short of expectations?
Yeah, I mean, Marquette's definitely fallen short, but, a pretty rough schedule to this point recently. You go on the road to Purdue, you lose 79-59, you come back, conference play, you lose to Georgetown at home, then you got to go on the road to Crieghton. Like, the Big East, Greg, we've talked about it as far as, UConn is by far the best team in the Big East, but night after night, you're going to be challenged in this conference. I think it's a good get-right spot for Marquette, and the spread kind of indicates that. It's only 2.5 points here, open 3.5, so the line's moving back towards Marquette. They're a 5-8 team. They're 0-2 in the Big East. You got 11-2 Seton Hall coming to town. At first glance, you would think that spread would be much larger than just 2.5 points. Again, opening 3.5, potentially moving to 4.5, but it seems like the spread is moving in the direction of the Golden Eagles right now. It could be a good spot to get right. They're going to need a big game from Chase Ross, shooting 42% from the field. Been relatively inconsistent as of late, 36%, 30%, 33% in his past few games. He was terrible against Georgetown, shooting 9% from the field in 31 minutes. Just unacceptable for a player like that. If he shows up, those numbers are going to swing, and just, good offense is going to create more good offense, and I think they're going to be able to get it done here. It's definitely a scary pick, though, knowing that Marquette's been super inconsistent up to this point.
Yeah, it certainly is. And with this Marquette team, it has just been a very, very wobbly season for them, to say the least. And then I think that this one is going to be a lot of fun, with it being North Carolina going up against Florida State, because typically when you think of North Carolina, you think of a team that is just running it and gunning it. They become a very mid-tempo team this year, based all around defense. Right now, they're about a 14.5-point favorite against Florida State. That total's hovering right around about 159.5, 160.5. How do you take a look at a game like this with a Florida State team that they're attempting 53.5% of their shots from three, which, in my opinion, that means lots of volatility.
Yeah, and that's what makes it hard, right? And for a team like North Carolina, who's been super consistent, 12-1 this season, I lean towards good defense, and I lean towards a team that can score inside. North Carolina has that capability, where Florida State, you're living and dying by the three ball. It's going to work out some nights for you, don't get me wrong. And Florida State is scoring 85 points a game, which is more than North Carolina right now. But the combination of, volatility with the three-pointer, with the defense, giving up 78 a game, it's a very risky move here. I think North Carolina first half could be a move, because this is a pretty big number. But over the course of a basketball game, when you have a better defensive team that could score inside and also defend on the perimeter, I think we got to give North Carolina some credit there. Florida State's going to have a rough time here. Look for Caleb Wilson. That's a guy, freshman for them, been a phenom, shooting 55% from the field, 19 points a game. I think that Florida State's going to have a tough time inside with these guys, and that's not going to allow them to cover that 14.5. So I'd lay the points here with the Tar Heels.
Yep, it is going to be interesting to see what we get in terms of ACC conference play, as we've got a few other games that are going down, like Pittsburgh versus Miami. That one's going to be, in my opinion, an interesting one. And then you get some SoCon conference play as well. And is there just anything else on the board that's really standing out to you for this Tuesday? Because we've got a smorgasbord of different games, whether that be non-conference games, whether that be competitive conference games. And we've got ourselves quite a few ranked teams that are going to be in action as well.
Yeah, well, I got one for you here, at least. Crieghton, I love them, 8-5, and 2-0, obviously, in the Big East, going against 10-3 Butler here. Another game where Crieghton is a 4.5-point favorite. Lines move in their favor up to 5.5. I think Crieghton finds a way to get a big win. And being a UConn guy, I love watching the Big East. It's basketball, it's purist, obviously. I love the SEC and the Big Ten and all these conferences, but there's just something about a Big East game in the middle of the week that always draws my interest. Looking at the ACC right now, Pittsburgh, Miami, Louisville, California. That's going to be a great game. Notre Dame, Stanford. But, really looking at this Louisville game, I want to keep seeing how good they are. 16th ranked team in the land right now. 5.5-point favor on the road against a good 12-1 Cal team. So we'll see how Louisville responds in a tough road environment here. I do think Louisville ultimately gets it done, but this is one where you could look towards Cal in the first half potentially. And then I think Louisville's just talent and overall experience kind of takes over at that point. But big opportunity for Cal against Louisville. So that's going to be a fun game too.
That is going to be a fun game, and we've got ourselves some great college basketball that is going to be coming our way the next few months. We got through the hard part last week. Now we've got ourselves just a lot that is going to be going down in general, and I know that you do a tremendous job, Tanner, on the college basketball front, but you really do a great job on so many different things, whether that is taking a look at college football with it being bowl season. I know that you're very dialed into everything that is happening with regards to the NFL and so much more, so love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can check me out at Tanner Kern or at Tanner Kern _ depending on the social media platform. Just search Tanner Kern, you'll find it. I'm on the DraftKings Sportsbook social pages pretty much every day. And then you can also check out my podcast, Ride the Line. We're talking a lot of college football right now, but we will transition into college basketball here shortly. And that is on Tuesdays and Fridays, wherever you get your podcasts.
And Tanner, he's doing such an amazing job looking at all that we are getting on so many different fronts. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Tanner for joining me on Cups Because It's now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some make shots. Here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Tanner Kern. He does such a tremendous job over at DraftKings, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks to Tanner for joining me in the last segment. And now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_81, and we're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with pretty much most of the games that are on the Las Vegas betting board, and then the teams from these conferences are going to be at the bottom. That'd be the America East, the Southland, the MEAC, the SWAC. I believe that we got them all. If I didn't say Northeast Conference as well, but let's get things started. 6:01, 6:02 on the card. It is Ohio, and they're going to be on the road against Central Michigan, and Central Michigan is a home underdog of 5.5 points, 150.5 to 151 is the total, and with Ohio, I did set them as a favorite of 4 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Central Michigan. This Ohio defense for the last few years has just been very uninspiring, to say the least. Last year, they were well outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They've slowed themselves down to being more of a mid-tempo team this year, and hasn't helped out the three-point shooting. They're shooting 29.8% from three-point range. They're just inside the top 300 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage. Aiden Hadaway has been solid. 13 points, 7.5 boards, pair of assists per game. And Jackson Paveletzky, and he's solid at the point guard spot. 17 points, 4 assists. He shoots 36% from three, but just not a lot around these guys. Javon Simmons has supplied about 12.5 points per game, but it's an Ohio team that has been a little bit better at generating turnovers. Top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Central Michigan certainly not a team that's going to be looking to push tempo. They're outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, and Central Michigan has been pretty dreadful on defense as well. They're hovering around 300th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, with really the inside game hurting them outside the top 310 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. But you've got Nathan Clearbot, a true sum footer, who's able to give you 13 points, 7 rebounds per game. For Central Michigan, they shoot 28.5% from three-point range, so good old situation of something's got to give here. One bad three-point shooting team, one bad three-point shooting defense, but Tamario Adley has been able to step up with about 10 points, 4 assists per game. It is a Central Michigan team that they themselves are outside the top 225 in terms of ball security with about 12.5 turnovers per game, but they've been a top 175 team in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. They've dealt with a little bit of injury to Roddy Johnson, who came over from Tennessee Tech. He's probably going to be back out of the fold once again. He's sort of been on and off, but that said, in the interim, you've been able to have Fat Brooks, Logan McIntyre, and Nick Mullen all provide at least 8 points per game, with Mullen being able to give you about 5 rebounds per game as well. McIntyre has been able to shoot about 36% from three-point range, and with both of these teams, the defense has been sketchy, both of these teams have been less than efficient on the offensive side of things. And again, you're not really going to be getting a lot of tempo out of either of these teams, but at their core, Michigan is a team that's looking to run maybe a little bit more, while Central Michigan, they're hovering right around about 314th in terms of total possessions per game. But I think that the inefficient defense does allow to the over. I set my total at 154. I'm in on that over, and with Ohio, could only set them as 4-point favorites, so we'll take 5+ here with Central Michigan. 603, 604 on the card. Wyoming is on the road against Air Force. Air Force is a home underdog of 10.5 to 11.5 points. 144.5 is the total, and with Wyoming, I did set them as a favorite of 13.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay it. You have an Air Force team that's just not been good with regards to their offense in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Air Force back outside the top 225 nationally, and for Air Force, they're once again not pushing any sort of tempo, about 302nd in terms of total possessions per game, 338th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, 286th in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Air Force here in Europe, they just really rely upon three-point shooting, and now they have to go up against a Wyoming team that has been a top 35 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Wyoming is allowing teams to shoot less than 30% from three-point range. That's the top 75 mark in the country. Wyoming a little bit more vulnerable inside, and you just don't have that with this Air Force team. And for Wyoming, they should be able to dominate the glass. They have been a top 80 team with regards to rebound percentage. Llewellyn Walker, about 14 points, 4 assists, steal per contest. Wyoming doing a bit of a better job in terms of generating turnovers as well. Top 150 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Nasir Meyer has really been that main outside shooter, 41% three-point shooting, 13.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. And for Wyoming, they're doing all this on the glass with Meyer, and it's 4.9 rebounds per game. And Caden Bennett, he also gives you 4.9 rebounds per game, being your top rebounder. So they're really doing it by committee. Out of their top 4 scorers, 3 of them give you at least a steal per game. And for Air Force, I'll keep on saying it, you've got a true 7-footer that doesn't rebound. That would be Wesley Chalkowski, who has been able to give the team 6 points and 2.6 rebounds per game. How are you 7 feet tall, getting good minutes, and you're only providing that? They've been able to get relatively good production, though, out of Lucas Hobland, who's been able to supply 12.5 points, shoots 35% from 3. Cam Sanders shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range as well. But for Air Force, I think that they're going to get bludgeoned down low. They're outside the top 225, as a matter of fact, top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. A little bit better at being able to guard the arc, but with the sloppiness of Air Force, I think that costs you an over, despite the fact that Wyoming has been looking to push a little bit more tempo in terms of total possessions per game. You've got this Wyoming team clocking in more in that neighborhood, about 84th, but made a total of 137.5. I like the under, and with Wyoming, I'm willing to lay up to 13 with them. 605, 606 on the card. East Tennessee State on the road against the Citadel. The Citadel is a home underdog of 11.5 to 12.5 points with a total of 146.5, and I said East Tennessee as a 14.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. The Citadel are playing very slowly once again in terms of total possessions per game. This team has tapered it back to 348th, and they are 301st in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Bottom 30 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Really not a lot going right for this team. And East Tennessee State hovering right around about 287th in terms of total possessions per game, so they're not looking to gun it. But East Tennessee State, they're right around about 110th in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Very balanced team, mid 33.2% three-point shooting percentage, about 200th in the country. But you've got Cam Morris, Brian Taylor combining for 28 points per game between the two of them. You get 8.5 boards. Morris is able to throw in there a block and a half per game. Jalen Smith, who comes on over from North Florida, just applies a little bit of everything. 2 steals, 10 points, 3 boards. He shoots about 32% from three-point range. East Tennessee State, you're in a pretty solid rebounding team. They've had a little bit more issue this season on the defensive glass, but you've got a Citadel team that's really not going to be doing a great job of grabbing second and third chances, about 260th in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Now, Solo Adbasi, their top rebounder with about 5.5 rebounds per game, he's back in the fold, but you only have 2 guys on the roster, he and Ezzy Wally, who's been able to give you 7 points and 4.2 rebounds per game, supplying more than 3.6 rebounds per game. Now, one thing that the Citadel does a good job of is taking care of the ball. Top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Christian Moore, Braxton Williams, they combine for about 21.5 points per game, and they both shoot about 36.5% from three-point range, but they're also outside the top 330 in terms of generating turnovers. They're getting just blasted inside, outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Not doing a great job on the glass. I do think that East Tennessee State going to be able to win from within. I think that you get a super duper slow game as well. I recognize that the Citadel very inefficient on defense, but they're also very, very inefficient on the offensive side of things as well. So this is a circumstance where I did set my line at a 14.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with ETSU. Made a low total of 134.5, so I'm also in on the under. 607, 6:08 on the card. Toledo plays us to Western Michigan. Western Michigan is a underdog of 9.5 to 10.5 points. 162 to 162.5 is that total. And with Western Michigan, I set them as an underdog of 11.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the 9.5 to 10.5. You've got a Toledo team that's actually become a top 85 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. So they've been able to do a better job with that regard. Now, you also have a Toledo team that is still not great with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage defense and their 3-point shooting percentage defense. They're a team that now very much gambles for turnovers. As a matter of fact, they are 345th with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Western Michigan team that they have been taking it on the chin inside as well. They're hovering more around about 214th in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but I just don't know if Western Michigan is going to be able to do enough for this total. That's a big reason why I set my total at a 157.5. I'm in on the under. And for Toledo, they're a fast team, but they're not necessarily like going to be going at warp speed. 149th in terms of total possessions per game. Western Michigan is actually a little bit faster. They're more around about 133rd, and for Western Michigan, this unit has been able to get good production within that neighborhood, about 16 points per game out of Jalen Griffith. He shoots 37.5% from three, as this team was dreadful with their 3-point shooting last season. Brady Schwartz was shooting 45.5% from three with his 7 points, 4 boards per contest, has been able to help out with that. Western Michigan always is a team that tries to hang their hat with regards to rebounding. They become a top 150 team with regards to rebound percentage. Max Burton, 7 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists per game. Good versatility there. Jaden Brewer comes over from Florida National, 13.5 points, 7 boards as well. But here's the issue for this team. They are turning the ball over a ton. Outside the top 290 in terms of ball security with over 14 turnovers per game. They allow opponents to shoot darn near 35% from 3-point range as well. While Toledo, not a great perimeter defense as well. This is a squad that I think is going to be able to induce those dead possessions. And then you've got Leroy Blyden Jr. and Sonny Wilson in the backcourt combining for about 31.5 points per game. Blyden has been able to shoot 41% from 3-point range. Down low, you do have Sean Craig giving you good versatility, 13 points, 7.5 boards. He's been able to shoot about 32.5% per three. And Austin Parks, he began his career at the Power Conference level, 11 points per game. Toledo doesn't necessarily play a big rotation. They mainly have 6 guys that all play 20-plus minutes. Kyler Vanderbilt, 10.5 points per game, shoots 38% from 3. Toledo as a whole, they're about country average, shooting 34% from 3, but they do a nice job taking care of the ball, winning that turnover battle. I do think that that's going to win out for a Toledo team that has become a top 225 team with regards to rebound percentage as well. Set my line at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Toledo, and I like the under. I set my total at a 157.5. 609, 610 on the card. It is Seton Hall, and they are going to be on the road facing off against Marquette, and Marquette is a underdog here of 2.5 points total on this game, between 139.5 to 140.5, and I'm willing to lay with Seton Hall. I did set them as a 4.5 point favorite. It just not went well for Marquette this season, and Marquette strangely has been much better at generating turnovers when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. This is a Marquette team that is a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but what they do a good job of in terms of generating turnovers, they then leave themselves vulnerable to on the inside, about 105th in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, while Seton Hall is just a total package. Seton Hall, 16th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're overall a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Seton Hall is even better at generating turnovers. They are a top 15 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so that them as a 4.5 point favorite as a result. For Seton Hall, this is a team that's been a little bit up and down with their 3-point shooting at about 33.2% from the outside, and opponents actually shoot 33.2% as well, but TJ Simpkins has really been able to come into his own. 11.5 points on 45.5% 3-point shooting. AJ St. McCray, 13 points, 2 steals. He's been able to shoot about 36.5% from the outside as well. And this is a Seton Hall team that's just doing a good job of rebounding by committee. You've only got 2 guys that give you over 3.8 rebounds per game. Najai Hines, who's been able to supply 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Stephon Payne, the Payne train, 7.5 points, 6.5 rebounds. And I know that Hines has been dealing with a little bit of injury, so that got factored in as well. But Elijah Fisher, 9.5 points, a steal, 3.5 rebounds per game. The Seton Hall team has been a top 100 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. And then you've got a Marquette team that you're just looking for guys to be able to step up around Chase Ross, because Ross has been great, 16.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Now he only shoots about 30% from 3, and this entire Marquette team, they are shooting 30.5% from 3-point range. Zay Lowry is no longer with the team. He was one of 5 guys that was averaging at least 8 points per game for the team, and among their top 5 scorers, he was actually their top 3-point shooter at 29.5%, so that's not great, to say the least. Sean Jones has been dealing with a little bit of an injury. Like, this is just a banged-up team. You've got Bren Gold down low, is giving you about 6.5 rebounds per game. Lone guy on the roster has to give you over 4.5 rebounds per game for Marquette. They're also outside the top 275 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. It's a Marquette team that's going to be looking to play at a little bit of more of a brisk pace, so you're going to have a tempo ward, Seton all about 320th in terms of total possessions per game. Marquette is about 62nd, but Marquette just not necessarily shooting it well. I do think that this game is going to be close enough for late game filling. I said a total of a 140.5, so at the 139.5, that's pretty much my back spy point on the over. So looking at the over, but with Seton, I'll set them as the 4.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay that number. 6-11, 6-12 on the card. North Carolina plays those to Florida State. Florida State is a underdog of 14.5 points. 160 to 160.5 is the total, and I made a total of 164.5. I do like the over. Florida State is just absolutely bombing it from 3-point range. Not necessarily making those threes, but they're going bombs away from 3. 53.5% of their shots come from 3-point range. Second highest mark in all of college basketball. North Carolina, top 30 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at 28%. I think that there might be a little bit of regression there, and Florida State's only shooting 31.4% from 3. I think they're doing for a little bit of positivity, as each of your top 4 scorers shoot 32.5% from 3 or less. Kobe McGee, 10.5 points last year at Drexel, was shooting more like 40% from 3. I think that rebounds. Robert McRae has been a good facilitator. 7 assists, stealing 13.5 points per game, but again, shooting just 20.5% from the outside. And Florida State has been good at generating turnovers. Top 30 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but that leaves them very vulnerable on the inside. They're outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And this is a North Carolina team that is not necessarily one of those vintage teams that really just lights you up from 3 or really plays fast. They're a mid-tempo team at about 187th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, with having Henry Vassar and Caleb Wilson combined for 20 rebounds per game. Wilson has been that top scorer with 19.5 points per game. Doesn't really shoot it well from 3, but Vassar does at 50% from the outside. He's been able to supply a little bit over block per contest as well. Now they're getting Seth Trimble back in the fold. He's only played in 4 games, but about 14.5 points per game. What he has been out there, not necessarily a great 3-point shooter, but takes the load off of Kyan Evans, who's been giving out about 4 assists per game. And Trimble in the games that he's played has been able to do so as well. North Carolina is sort of a make it a take it sort of team. They do a great job taking care of the ball. Top 45 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but they're also outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but do a nice job inside. Top 10 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think with Florida State being a team that really likes to go bombs away from 3-point range, that they're going to be able to hit some of those shots. And North Carolina, even though they've slowed things down this year at their core, got a lot of guys that are willing to run, so I did set my line at a 16.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with North Carolina, as I do think that both teams make quite a few threes here, and I'm in on the over. Semi-total 164.5. 6-13, 6-14 on the card. Miami of Ohio is on the road against Bowling Green, and Bowling Green is a favorite of 5.5 points. 153.5 is the total, and I set my line at 2. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio has been a very good offense, a top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and very low key. They are undefeated right now. Nobody's really talking about them because they're out there in the MAC, but you know what, for Miami of Ohio, the defense has still been strong as well. They're a top 60 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. Both of these teams very good at generating turnovers. Miami of Ohio in road/short games, top 72 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, for Bowling Green, they're just a top 25 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Bowling Green has one of the best players in the country in terms of winning that turnover battle, and that would be Javonte Campbell. 3.7 steals per game. That is the top 5 mark in all of college basketball. 15.5 points, 4.2 assists. Now he only shoots 27.5% from 3. And Bowling Green is a mid-tempo team, about 163rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Miami of Ohio a little bit faster, hovering right around about 112th, 113th. But for Bowling Green, this has been a team that's left a little bit of something to be desired offensively. They are outside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They very much look to monopolize their defense, but Bowling Green also pretty strong inside. They're a top 75 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, top 110 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. So while they do sell out for turnovers, they're still doing a great job there. And for Bowling Green, they've been a top 50 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well. So not a lot of second and third chances to be had for Miami of Ohio, with Sam Towns give you about 13.7 rebounds per game. Troy Glover, not a big time scorer with only 7 points per game, but a little bit of a block, a steal, 4.5 rebounds per game, just really fits the system in general. And then Javon Ruffin along Justin Thomas, they combine for 17.5 points, and they both shoot 40% from 3, but I think Miami of Ohio holds in there because Miami of Ohio just is not generating second chances to start with. They are outside the top 300 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they are right now shooting over 43% from 3. That's a top 5 mark in all of college basketball. 6'8" Almar Avlison, who comes over from Bradley, 47% 3-point shooter with 13.5 points per game. Brent Byers right now leading the way with 14.5 points. He shoots 43% from 3. Evan Opsero, 14 points on about 39.5% 3-point shooting, and Peter Suter still shooting 57% from 3-point range. Absolutely ridiculous ridiculous what we've seen out of this team. They do a nice job taking care of the ball. They're a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis for Miami of Ohio. They also do a solid job with their own defense. Top 150 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a defense-oriented game. I think that Miami of Ohio experiences a bit of regression with their 3-point shooting. So, like the under, semi-total more around a 146, and I'm going to take the points with Miami of Ohio. Set them as a 2-point dog. 6-15, 6-16 on the card. Davidson plays host to Duquesne. Duquesne is an underdog of 3.5 points. So on this game, it is 152.5, and I did set Duquesne as an underdog of 2 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the points. The biggest thing for Duquesne is that they have got to take care of the ball better. They're outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and they've been a top 110 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Davidson, they're about a country average team in terms of generating turnovers themselves, and you're going to have a massive tempo war, as last year Duquesne was playing very slowly. Not the case this year. Davidson, they are very slow, 347th in terms of total possessions per game. Duquesne is 38th, but Duquesne has really dialed it back. They're playing at a rate of about 4 possessions per game fewer over their last 5 games than at the beginning part of the season. A little bit of that is a byproduct of some of the teams that they're playing against, but I do think that Duquesne is realizing that they were playing a little bit too fast for their own good, and they're going to look to maximize what they've been able to get out of Terrence Cunard, who's been supplying 15.5 points, 5 assists. Right now, shooting 43.5% from 3-point. Sean Hughley has been dealing with a bit of injury. We have not seen him really in about 3 or so weeks. If he does play in this game, he's going to be rather limited, so that's been factored in. He was supplying about 15 points per contest, but in the interim, Jacob Nisis, 8 points, 6 boards. He gives you a bit of versatility, shooting over 40% from 3-point. Maximus Edwards, who's just never been the same player since leaving George Washington. He's been able to supply about 8 points per game. David Dixon, he's just a nice mixer and shaker that gives you like 6 points, a few rebounds per game. I really like what these guys do bring to the table. And for Davidson, this is a team that is not going to be fighting for any sort of second and third chances whatsoever. With Davidson, they're outside the top 280 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Now they're pretty good in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances themselves, and for Davidson, they're looking to really just make their hay from the outside. They're shooting 38% from 3-point range, top 50 mark in all of college basketball. Sam Brown about 8.5 points per game, and it's a whole greater than some of its parts approach. You've only got one player who gives you over 10 points per game, Josh Govins, and that's 10.4 points per game, but you've got 6 different guys with at least 8 points per game, and then you've got Devin Brown, who gives you like 6 points and assists and a half per contest. So I mean, these guys do a great job there. Hunter Adam is right now shooting 49% from 3. I think that they're going to see a little bit of regression there, but Davidson is a bit vulnerable on the inside, outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Again, not going to be giving themselves a lot of second and third chances, and with this Duquesne team, they are a top 35 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. They're looking to own the paint, and I think that they're going to do so. So I set my line at 2. I'm willing to take the points with Duquesne. I'm in on the under as well. Made my total a 148. 6-17, 6-18 on the card. Charlotte is playing us to Temple. We give our O to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls, as Charlotte is a 1.5 point favorite with a total of 143.5. Set a total of a 146.5. I like the over. Now, both of these teams are playing at a very slow and controlled pace. Temple is 330th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Charlotte is somehow even slower at 357th, but for Temple games, they're very much make it and take it sort of games. Temple is a top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 300 in terms of taking care of the ball, and you've got a Charlotte team that this year has been able to do a much better job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. 53rd in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. When they're at home, they grab 38.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and I do think that that wins out in this spot. I set Charlotte as a 2.5 point favorite, so I'm willing to lay a very small number with them. Ben Bradford has been that main guy for Charlotte, 14.5 points. He's only shooting about 23% from 3, but Anton Boinke, he's a true 7-footer that shoots 47% from 3 with 10.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Lone guy on the roster that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, but by committee, these other guys have been able to step up, like a Jamie Ellen Avenga. When he's been out there, he's been able to give you about 4 rebounds per game. He's dealing with a little bit of injury, so most likely going to be out of the fold once again, but you've been able to, in the interim, be able to get some relatively good production out of Kula Mading, who's been able to give you about 5 points per game. He comes on over from the MEAC, and then Dezane Mingo, along with Damwani Harrison, have been able to combine for about 17.5 points per game, both shooting the mid-30s from 3-point for a Charlotte team that they have been outside the top 200 with regards to ball security with about 12 turnovers per game. And on the flip side for Temple, this is a squad that is going to give up lots of open looks from 3. They're outside the top 230 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they themselves shoot 37.5% for the outside, with Aiden Tobiason shooting 40% from 3 of 15 points per game. Darian Bill Fortuff has been able to give you 18 points. He shoots about 36% from 3 with Temple. I do do think that it's going to be very fascinating to see how they're going to be able to hold up down low in this game, considering they just are not one of the best rebounding teams in all of college basketball, but not the world's worst in terms of keeping teams to only one shot. They do an okay job on the defensive glass, but they're outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I think that wins out, and I think that even though it's going to be a low possession game, I think that's going to be an efficient game. Semi-total 146.5, like the over, and I do like Charlotte laying the small number, 619, 620 on the card. It is Miami. They're going to be playing us at Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is an underdog of 10.5 to 11 points. 146.5 to 148 is the total. I said a total of a 146, so do like the under. You've got a Pittsburgh team that has really slowed it down. Meanwhile, Miami, they're about 75th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Pittsburgh 343rd, but Pittsburgh has been relatively solid in terms of the interior. Now, with regards to being able to guard the arc, generating turnovers, that's not necessarily been the forte of Pittsburgh, but it's the Pittsburgh team that's 56th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They are 72nd in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Miami is a top 50 team in terms of percentage of their shots that do come from 2-point range. So Cam Corrin is going to be big in this game. Used to play in the state of Florida over at Florida State. 13.5 points, 8.5 boards. He's been pretty rock solid for this team. And then you got Brandon Cummings, who's been able to shoot about 35.5% for 3, 12.5 points per game. And Pittsburgh, with regards to their own 3-point shooting, is actually not bad. They're shooting 37% for 3, top 75 mark in all of college basketball. They are outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 250 in terms of generating turnovers as well, but they've still been able to get some relatively good production out of DeMarco Minor, 10.5 points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists per game, so good versatility there. And then for Miami, they've been very much looking to their big men to really lead the way, as you've got Malik Renew giving you 20.5 points, 6.5 boards. He's shooting about 35% from 3-point range. Now, they are going to be without Dante Allen moving forward, so that hurts them. He was giving the team like 7 points per game, but you've got Sheldon Henderson, True Washington, both give you about 13.5 points, 4 to 4.5 rebounds per game apiece. And with Washington shooting 40% for 3, Miami is a solid 3-point shooting team at 36.5%. That's the top 80 mark in all of college basketball, but they've been really owning things in the paint. Top 40 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Top 50 team with regards to rebound percentage as well, with Ernest Uday only gives you about 6.8 points per game, supply 9.8 boards, block and a half per contest. I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be played in the trenches, and for Miami, to their credit, they're also a top 75 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, so I think they get a little bit of a lower scoring game. Semi-total 146, I like the under, but I think Pittsburgh holds up inside. Semi-line at 8, so won't take those points. 621, 622 on the card. It is Wisconsin playing us UW Milwaukee. Milwaukee 820.5 to a 21.5 point underdog. 155.5 is the total. And with Wisconsin, I did set them as a favorite of 23.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it. You've got a Milwaukee team that's actually doing a great job of taking care of the ball. Top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but now you go up against a Wisconsin team that's been solid with their 3-point shooting at 34.5%. They are a much better offensive team when they're at home rather than away from home. You're going to be finding some big home and road splits with regards to a lot of these Big Ten teams, and it feels like Wisconsin might have some of the most demonstrative in all of college basketball. They are quite literally scoring 30.1 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than away from home, and they're still doing the little things well. For Wisconsin, they are a top 70 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, a top 25 team with shooting 77.9% at the free throw line, with having Nick Boyd and John Blackwell lead the way, with both giving you 19 to 19.5 points per game. Blackwell shoots 41% from 3-point range. Noah Winter has good versatility, only shooting 27.5% from 3, but 14 points, a block, 9.5 rebounds per game. And I do think that Milwaukee is going to be having a tough time being able to match up with that. You've got a Milwaukee bunch that has been able to get some good production out of Daniil Janovic, 13.5 points, 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists. He's been able to shoot about 57% from 3-point range. I do think that that's going to be going downward a little bit. And for this UW Milwaukee team, they're okay in terms of generating turnovers, about 225th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You've got a Wisconsin team that's playing faster than they really ever have, 107th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Milwaukee, a little bit more of a mid-tempo team this year, 169th with that regard, but leave themselves very vulnerable from the outside. UW Milwaukee's allowing teams to shoot 39% from 3. That is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. They are outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so I think that they're going to take it on the chin inside with Milwaukee, top 50 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You've had Faison Fields give you about 7.5 points, 6.5 boards, so he's been solid with that regard. Amar Uyugard shoots 35% from 3 with about 11 points per game, but do think in the end, even though Wisconsin has their warts in terms of moving it up from 3, I think that Wisconsin just does a great job executing on offense, and I think both teams keep things pretty efficient. So my total 157.5, like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 23 here with Wisconsin. 623, 624 on the card. UMass is on the road against Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan is a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. 147.5 to 148.5 is the total, and I just set a total here of a 144.5. I do like the under, and I do like UMass here on the money line. I set UMass as the 2.5 point favorite. They are by far the better rebounding team in this game. With UMass, they are overall in the top 50 in terms of rebound percentage. It goes up to 20th with regards to road/neutral court venue, and the offense has been much better when they've been away from home as well. UMass is 58th in the country in terms of points per possession in a road/neutral court environment, and this is a UMass team that's going to be playing with some pace. They're 45th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They actually dial it back by about 4 possessions per game fewer when they're away from home, and Eastern Michigan not playing with a lot of tempo, 229th in the country with this regard, and Eastern Michigan is hovering in that neighborhood about 257th, 258th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as they've got a main trio that they've really been looking to. Mohammed Habhab, who has been able to give you 14.5 points, 7.5 boards, but doesn't necessarily pop it well from 3. Carlos Hart has been that main 3-point shooter at about 41% from the outside, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, and then Edison Patterson, do-it-all guy, 12 points, pair of assists, 5 rebounds, mid-30s, 3-point shooter, but not a ton of depth with regards to this team. Aiden Rubio is someone that I thought could be a sharpshooter. He's only shooting 26% from the outside. It's a Eastern Michigan team that, to their credit, the defense is a whole heck of a lot better this year. They are now clocking in the top 180 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They've been a top 225 team with regards to rebound percentage, but they just don't match up with this UMass team very well, as for UMass, you just have a lot of size in general, and they have been able to address the fact that they were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, with Marcus Banks stepping up. 16.5 points, shoots 38% from 3, comes in from UMBC. And the Leonardo Batil, 16.5 points, 8 boards, pair of assists. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3 himself, while Kajai Parker has been able to shoot about 42.5% from the outside, 10.5 points per game. You right now have 3 separate guys give you at least 6.5 rebounds per game, with the other being Daniel Hankins Sanford, give you about 11.5 points, 6 boards. And then Jaden Najunji, I don't think I mentioned him. He's been able to give you about 7 assists per game as well, with UMass also being one of the better teams in terms of generating turnovers, a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and teams shoot less than 27% from 3 against them. I think that this UMass defense wins out in this case. Set my line at 2.5. I like UMass on the money line, and I like the under. I set my total at a 144.5. 625, 626 was supposed to be Buffalo versus Northern Illinois. This game has been postponed. I would have to think due to weather. I really don't care why it was postponed, but it's postponed, and we can't make money on it. So let's move on. 627, 628. It is Tennessee State on the road against Tennessee Tech, and Tennessee Tech finds themselves as a slim favorite here of 2.5 points, seeing a 1.5 out there as well. Total on scheme 151.5 to 152.5, and I set my line at 2.5, so at a 2 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Tennessee Tech. Tennessee Tech has been looking to push quite a bit of tempo, and Tennessee State last year was a super fast team. Now they're only a fast team. They're about 47th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, you've got a Tennessee Tech team that they are very much looking to move it themselves. They're about 86th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but interesting split here. They're playing at a rate of about 7 possessions per game fewer when they're at home rather than away from home, but did still set a total of a 152.5. I like the over mainly because with Tennessee State, I think that there's positivity coming with the fact that they shoot 27.5% from 3. This is not a good shooting team. I don't think that they're quite that bad, though. You've got Aaron Namakura, who's been able to give you 17 points, 3.3 assists per game. He's only shooting 27% from 3. Travis Harper's like the lone guy on the roster, shooting above 33% from 3 at 36%, about 16 points, 4.5 boards. He's been rock solid, and this Tennessee State team does a nice job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances, top 80 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but they're also hovering right around about 280th in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and have a Tennessee Tech team that's had a tough time taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 3 in terms of ball security, but they have been able to pile drive the ball inside. Top 125 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, with a trio of guys, Brandon Matu, Danny Pounds, and Makai Cameron, who have been able to combine for 35 points per game. And with Cameron, he shoots 36% from 3-point range. With Pounds and Cameron, they actually combine for about 9 rebounds per game. With the squad, they've been able to do an okay job in terms of generating turnovers as well. Top 150 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they leave themselves very vulnerable from the outside. Teams are shooting over 35% from three against them, but they've been able to do a good job with that interior defense. I do think that wins out against the Tennessee State team, that they're very much looking to pile drive the ball inside, and then JoJuan Nichols with his 9.5 points, blocked 4.5 rebounds per game. I think that he helps this team win from within. So I just set my line at a 2.5, willing to lay up to a deuce here of Tennessee Tech, made a total of 152.5, so at 152 or lower, I'm in on the over. 629, 630 on the card. It is Butler. They are going to be on the road against Crieghton. Crieghton, a slim favorite in this spot. You're going to be laying 4.5 to 5.5 with them. Total on this game between 152.5 to a 153.5, and I set Butler as an underdog of 2.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now with Crieghton, things do look to be getting very much more online with them. They had a few nice performances prior to the break after it was just a less than savory start to the season, and they're cranking up the tempo once again. They're back up to about 233rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game after they had really slowed things down, and Butler has sped themselves up. They're up to about 40th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so interesting spot here with the total. I did set mine at a 154.5. I'm going to be in on the over because it does feel like Crieghton is just finally starting to find that sort of swagger on offense, and you know that Crieghton is not going to force any turnovers whatsoever. They, year in and year out, are one of the worst teams with this regard. They're back outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they also cut you off from the free throw line. They're a top 10 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis on defense. They are vulnerable from the outside. They're a country average team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but Josh Dix has stepped up to become the top scorer for the team. 12.2 points, 3 assists, shooting about 36.5% from three, and then Blake Harper, Austin Schwartz, and Jason Green, all between 8.5 to 9.5 points per game, all shooting between 36.7 and 38.1% from the outside, but Schwartz has really been the X factor recently. 9+ points in each of the last 5 games, double figures in 4 of those contests, so like what he's doing, you need a little bit more out of Willem Freeman than the 5 rebounds per game. As for this Crane team, right now, they are outside the top 125 with regards to rebound percentage, and Butler should be able to win that battle inside with the fact that Michael Ajayi has been averaging a double-double, 16.6 points, 12.2 boards. Absolutely love what he's bringing to the table. Butler shooting about 36% from three with Jamie Kaiser, Finley Bizjack leading the way, combining to shoot about 37% from the outside. Bizjack, 16.5 points, pair of assists per game. Kaiser, more around 10.5 points, 5.3 rebounds per game. And Butler's doing an incredible job of giving themselves second and third chances. Top 50 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Not a team that's going to generate a lot of turnovers themselves, hovering right around about 250th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but top 110 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I think that does just enough to keep them lively. I think they can get some late game fouling to help out with the over. So set my line at 2.5, 1, take 3+ here with Butler, and I'm in on the over. 631, 632 on the card. It is St. Mary's on the road against Pepperdine, and the Waves of Pepperdine are a home underdog here of 19.5 points. 139.5 to 141.5 is that total, and I did set my line at a 14.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points. With St. Mary's, they just have not been the same 3-point shooting team when they've been away from them. They shoot about 30.3% from 3-point range at home. That goes down to about 30.6% away from home. Pepperdine, a neither here nor there defense, hovering in the neighborhood about 195th to 200th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've had a tough time taking care of the ball. They are outside the top 280 in terms of ball security with over 13 turnovers per game. That said, they go up against a St. Mary's team that's really not going to force the issue. You've got a St. Mary's team that's still very good defensively, top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're also about 285th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, as the bread and butter of the St. Mary's team is their rebounding. Top 10 team with regards to rebound percentage. You've got a Pepperdine team as well outside the top 200, but you've been able to have Style Phipps do a really good job with this versatility. 12 points, 6.5 boards, 5.3 assists per game. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from three at 26.5%. That's why you've got Javon Cooley shooting 38.5% from the outside, 14 points, 5 rebounds per game, and then Danilo Dosic, he's saying 6'10" or so, 33% 3-point shooter, about 11.5 points per game. Really doesn't grab any sort of rebounds whatsoever, and that's where St. Mary's is going to be able to win out in this case. It's a St. Mary's squad that actually has one of the more underrated sharpshooters in all of college basketball as well. Love what Mikey Lewis has been able to do this season. 14.5 points, trio of assists. He shoots 40% from 3-point range, but down low, you got Paulius Marsukis, 18.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Main, shall we say, rim protector is Andrew McKeever, though. 9.5 points, 9.4 boards, a little bit over a block per contest. This St. Mary's team is right now a top 40 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Teams are only shooting about 30.5% from 3-point range against them. You've got two relatively slow teams, as St. Mary's is right around about 300 with regards to total possessions per game. Pepperdine, we're around about 220th, so they're a little bit more of a mid-tempo team, but that said, I do think that for St. Mary's, are they going to be able to get the job done? Yes. Are they going to be able to completely dominate on the boards? Yes, but St. Mary's also outside the top 200 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, with them having a few struggles from 3-point range away from home. I do think that this is going to be a bit of a slog of a game. Set my total at a 138.5. I like the under, and I'm going to be one to take the points with Pepperdine. Made them a 14.5 point dog. 633, 634 on the card. It is Nevada, and they're going to be on the road against Colorado State. Colorado State finds themselves as a mid-tier favorite here of 3.5 to 4 points. So on this game, it is 146.5 to 147.5, and Colorado State, the 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Not going to get a ton of possessions in this game, as Nevada's right now clocking in 263rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Colorado State, they are very efficient on offense. They're a top 15 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're also 362nd in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game as well. So that makes things very fascinating. You've got a Colorado State team that has really not been able to force the issue on defense here in 48th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. So that does mean that Nevada's going to get some clean possessions, and they should be able to do a pretty solid job down low. You've got Joel Armatradin, who's been supplying about 5 boards, 6 points at a little bit over a block per contest. You get about 8 rebounds out of Elijah Price, who's able to throw in there 12 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3, and Nevada's a good 3-point shooting team. They shoot 37.3% from 3. That's a top 70 mark in all of college basketball. Top 100 team with regards to their free throw shooting percentage as well. But Nevada's a team that looks to pound the ball inside. They're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range, and they're outside the top 330 with that 2-point shooting percentage. So that's very interesting to say the least. Both of these teams do a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball. Nevada is a top 10 team with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, while being a top 125 team in terms of generating turnovers. Colorado State, meanwhile, they, again, don't generate any turnovers whatsoever, but top 150 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Lead the country with their 43.5% 3-point shooting, which has been seeing some regression, but you saw each of your top 5 scorers shooting at least 42.7% from 3-point range. Brandon Rechsteiner, 11.5 points, 2.8 assists, as really that main facilitator outside of Jevin Muniz, who has a 6'6" sort of point forward, 8 points, 4.5 boards, 5 assists. He's been rock solid. And then you've got Josh Passarelli shooting 50.5% from 3, 14 points per game. Kyle Jorgensen, 14 points per game. He shoots 50% from 3-point range. And Nevada overall has been able to do a pretty solid job with their defense, but their main kryptonite is giving it up from 3. They allow opponents to shoot 34.5% from the outside. That is outside the top 330 in all of college basketball. So I do think that Colorado State going to be able to find some holes in that defense. Kerry Booth has been very versatile, 12.5 points, 6.5 boards. He shoots 46.5% from 3-point range, and with this Colorado State team, they're going to give up some open looks themselves, but I just think that this game is going to be too slow for and over, and I do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression with both of these teams from the outside. Set a total here of a 144.5, so I do like the under, and with Colorado State, willing to lay up to 6 with them. 635, 636 on the card. It is Fresno State. They are playing against Utah State. Utah State is a favorite here of 14.5 points, 151.5 to 152.5 is the total. I'd say Utah State is an 11.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Fresno State. Fresno State, an improved team with regards to their defense this season. I'm not going to call them an amazing team or anything like that, but you know what? Last year they were one of the more grody defenses in all of college basketball. They're not going to be quite on par with Utah State. Utah State is currently 7th, by the way, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so I do think that you get a lot of dead possessions. I set a total of a 147.5. As a result, I'm going to be in on the under, and for Utah State, in terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 38th, but if you look at what they've been able to do in terms of a road/neutral venue, that actually goes up into the top 20. Meanwhile, for Fresno State, they've actually been a little bit better with regards to their defense when they've been away from home. Overall, about 129th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But for Fresno State, even though they have been having some massive turnover issues themselves, they're turning the ball over darn near 14 times per game. So Utah State is going to be able to exploit that. I think that they do just enough on the inside to be able to hold in there, as this has been a Fresno State team that's been very much relying upon Deshaun Gorey down low with about 9.5 points per game. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range as well, so he's done a solid job there. And Wilson Jaquez, 7.5 boards, just under a block per contest with about 8 points per game. But Jake Heidbreder, he's been able to do a pretty solid job with regards to just running the offense. 3 assists, 18 points per game. And then you have Zion Collins, who's giving you about 2.2 steals per game. And this is a Fresno State team that they themselves have been a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And teams are shooting less than 30% from 3-point range against them. With Utah State, you've got one of the best mid-major players in all of college basketball, and MJ Collins, 20.5 points. He was actually playing good minutes over at Vanderbilt last season, shooting 50% from 3. And Utah State is a 38.5% 3-point shooting team. That's a top 35 mark in the country. They're also top 40 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage as well. So a very nice, well-rounded team with Gary Clark doing a good job down low with 7.5 boards, 10.5 points per game. Mason Flozlov, he does it all. 2.7 steals, 2.5 assists, 5.5 boards, 15.5 points. He shoots 36% from 3. And then Kobe King has been able to shoot 42% from the outside. But I think that Fresno State, with the way that they guard the 3-point line and with the way that both of these teams generate turnovers, I think that this game becomes just a little bit more sloppy as a result. So I did set a total here of a 147.5. I do like that under end with Utah State. Could only make them an 11.5 point favorite, so we'll take those points. 637, 638 on the card. It is Notre Dame on the road against Stanford, and Stanford is a favorite of 5.5 points. Total on this game, it is 146 and 146.5. I said Stanford is a 6.5 point favorite. Could it be one to lay the number? We did see Stanford have a few issues with Seton a few days ago, but I think actually playing that game helps about very much in this sort of circumstance, especially with Notre Dame deal with an injury to Marcus Burton, top scorer with about 18.5 points per game, has not been seen the last 3 games, so that means that Jalen Harrelson has had to really step up in the offense. That has been good. 14.5 points. He's not a guy that's going to give you any 3-point shooting, but gives out 3 assists per game for a Notre Dame team that they very much rely upon efficiency. With Notre Dame, this has been a top 75 team, but just points scored on a per possession basis. They shoot 38% from 3, and with Notre Dame, you know that they're really not going to force a lot of turnovers. They are outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but even though they don't necessarily generate a lot of turnovers, the one thing that this team does a very good job of is not allowing second and third chances, and that's a big reason why they have been able to be in the top 100 with regards to their points allowed on a per possession basis, because Notre Dame is second in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Only 19.8% of opponents' missed shots result in an offensive rebound. Stanford's right there, though. Stanford is allowing 22% of opponents' missed shots to result in an offensive rebound. That's number 12 in all of college basketball, and Stanford has one of the most underrated freshmen in all of college basketball, Abuka Okore, 22.8 points, 3 assists, 3.5 rebounds. He shoots 34% from 3-point, but then Benny Giler, Jisam Okpara have been able to combine for about 27.5 points per game, and Giler shoots 46.5% from 3-point, so both of these teams are not going to allow a lot of second and third chances, and this Stanford team has been a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You know that Notre Dame is not going to be forcing a lot of turnovers themselves. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And with Stanford, I do think that with them being able to have that nice little bit of advantage with regards to turnovers, and additionally being able to have someone like a Jeremy Den-Smith now stepping up, giving the team 7.5 points, about 2.5 assists per game. Ryan Archibald got off to a rough start to the season, but now he's shooting 36% from 3-point. And just the overall travel that Notre Dame is going to be going through as well. And additionally, this Stanford team forces things inside. They're a top 40 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from inside the 3-point line. I think that allows Stanford to be able to control the tenor of this game and get the job done. I set my line at 6.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6 with Stanford, and I did make a total of a 146.5, so at a 146 or less, I'm also in on this total over. 639, 640 on the card. Louisville's on the road against Cal. California is a 7.5 point home underdog. 158.5 to 159.5 is the total. Set my line at 6.5, so at 7+, I am willing to take those points with Cal, and I do think that the travel does play quite a bit here. You got a Louisville team that has been playing quite up-tempo with regards to their pace. Louisville, in terms of total possessions per game, they do find themselves right in the neighborhood about 56th in the country. Cal has been a relatively mid-tempo team at about 181st, and this is a Cal team that is absolutely no joke whatsoever with the way that they are playing defense. They are 50th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and a lot of people think of Louisville for their offense. This has also been a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. In terms of a road/shoot score venue, this has been a team that's been able to do a solid job in terms of generating turnovers as well. And for Louisville, they're actually 30th in the country with regards to rebound percentage, but they have a negative rebound percentage when they're away from home as well. So this has been a team that has had some pretty substantial splits with Louisville. You know that you're going to be able to get a lot of production out of the backcourt of this team. I know that Mikael Brown has been dealing with a little bit of injury, but I'm thinking that he should be good to go. Additionally, you've been able to have Ryan Conwell be able to step up in the interim, 19 points per game. He shoots 39.5% from 3. Even if you don't have Brown out there in the fold for the team, he was only shooting about 27% from 3-point range. Now, you've got Sandra Frew along with Isaac McNeely combined for 22 points per game, and Frew is actually shooting 66% from 3, obviously. Low volume there, but 6 rebounds per game. McNeely, he shoots 40.5% from 3-point range, but I think that Cal is going to be able to hold in there because Day-Day Ames has been able to do an absolutely incredible job with his backcourt. For Ames, he's come in there, giving the team 17.5 points on right around about 46.5% 3-point shooting, and out of your top 4 scorers, 3 of them do shoot at least 40% from this series for this team, with John Camden give you about 15.5 points, 5 boards. He shoots 44.5% from the outside for Cal. They've also been able to do a nice job in terms of their interior defense. They've been a top 65 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Lone issue that you got for this Cal team is that they don't give themselves a lot of second and third chances. This team, well outside the top 200 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but only about 10 turnovers turnovers per game. They're doing a nice job maximizing their possessions. Top 35 team with regards to their own 3-point shooting percentage. I think that Cal on their home floor, they do a nice job holding in there. I also do think that Lee Dordo, who's been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game, going to do a solid job against a Louisville team that's been great with regards to their interior defense and regards to those rebounding numbers, but you don't necessarily have that main guy for them either. So I did set a total of 156.5. I do think that Cal forces some turnovers, so like the under, and I do like the points here with Cal. 641, 642 on the card. San Diego is going to be playing with Gonzaga. Gonzaga at 28.5 to a 29.5 point favorite. 161.5 to 162.5 is the total, and with Gonzaga, I set them as a 29.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 28.5. This is a Gonzaga team that's just doing so many things well, and for Gonzaga, you always know that this team is going to be great offensively, but you never know what you're going to get on the defensive side of things. Well, that has been much better this year. You've got Graham Ike give you a darn near double-double this season to help out a team that's currently number 7 in the country in terms of rebound percentage. Braden Huff has been able to give you 5+ rebounds per game as well, and Gonzaga is currently 8th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. San Diego is not. San Diego is right now clocking in 248th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a San Diego team that just really has no sort of rebounding whatsoever. That's where they're going to lose this game, and for San Diego, I mean, the backcourt has not been bad. You've got Tenori Lane, Sebastian Gorecito, who have both been able to shoot over 39% from 3. They have been able to supply 10.8 points per game apiece. Tyler Johnson, good versatility, 2.3 steals, 13.5 points, 3.5 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. And this San Diego team has been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they are well outside the top 275 in terms of rebound percentage. They are well outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 250 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. And then on the flip side for Gonzaga, even though Huff is not shooting well from 3 at about 28%, and Graham Ike, he shoots it from 3, but he only shoots about 29% from the outside, you've got the ancillary guys being able to step up. Mario St. Sapri, he's been supreme with 8 points, 4.5 boards. He shoots 50% from 3. Adam Miller shoots 38% from the outside, 8.5 points per game. Ty and Grant Foster just does a bit of everything. A block, 5 rebounds, 11 points per game. Again, he doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3 himself, but you don't need that for this Gonzaga team, because Gonzaga has now become a team that has been hyper-focused on getting the ball inside. They're a top 50 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. They've been a top 25 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. I think that Gonzaga goes out there, dominates this game. I did set my total at 157.5. Gonzaga with that defense, I think that they do a nice job holding down San Diego. And San Diego, not necessarily the most up-tempo team as well. They're, in terms of total possessions per game, 225th. So in on the under, and I'm willing to lay it with Gonzaga. 643, 644 on the card. It is Portland playing goes to Santa Clara. Santa Clara is a 12.5 point road favorite. 155.5 is the total. And with Santa Clara, well, I set them as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Portland. I recognize that they took a really nasty loss a few days ago up against Washington State, but that said, for this Portland team, they've actually been a good team inside with regards to their shooting percentage. They're a top 75 team with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. Defense leaving a lot to be desired. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but they've also been unlucky. They're a bottom 15 team in the country in terms of opponents' free throw shooting percentage against them, so that's a little bit of an issue. And the biggest thing for Portland is they need to clean up the turnovers, outside the top 320 in terms of ball security with about 13.5 turnovers per game, but the freshman and Timo George, along Joel Foxball, have stepped up big with a combined 25.5 points per game. Foxball gives you 7 assists per game, shoots 35% for 3. Makai Balu has been able to shoot 39.5% from the outside. He's able to supply this team with about 12 points per game, so these guys have been rock solid. And then you have a true 7-footer and Jermaine Balsinger-Webb, who's only been able to give you about 7 points per game, but he does give the team a little bit of shiftiness and a little bit of a post presence in general. And for Santa Clara, this team has been very good in terms of generating turnovers. They become a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. With Santa Clara, the 3-point shooting percentage is way down. They lost a lot of their guard play from the season ago, but Christian Ammon is taking ownership of the backcourt, 16.5 points. He's shooting 45% from 3-point range. And then you've got Alan Graves and Elijah Mai combining shoot about 39.5% from 3, with Mai 15 points per game, only about 9 points per game out of Alan Graves, but that said, you've got a lot of facilitation outside of that. Jake Ammensinger, he stands right around 6'8", only gives you 7 points and 6.5 rebounds per game, but 3.8 assists and a steal per game as a versatile big man for Santa Clara. This is a defense that is much better than it has been in past years. They are currently 102nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Portland obviously quite lackadaisical with this regard at 208th, but with this Portland team, they're also giving up about 28 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than away from them. They have been much better when they've been out there in the Great great state of Oregon. I do think that this is going to be a game that is going to be involving some sloppiness, but I also do think that Santa Clara is going to start to bump up their tempo a little bit more. You know that Portland is going to be pushing pace. They're about 53rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Santa Clara is 210th. That's way down from where they typically are, and I do think that they're going to find some holes in this Portland defense, but I also do think that Portland is going to do a good job with their interior offense of holding in there. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with Portland, set them as a underdog of 7.5 points, and do like the over. Set my total at 157.5, 645, 646 on the card. San Diego State is on the road against San Jose State. And old San Jose State is a 10.5 to an 11.5 point home underdog. 143.5 is the total, and set San Diego State as a 9.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to take them plus here with San Jose State. Now for San Jose State, what has really been the issue for this team has been their interior defense. San Jose State overall is about 283rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for some reason, it's right now San Diego State is a much more up-tempo team. San Jose State has been playing quite slow. They're about 305th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and we've seen this from the past with San Diego State, where they play quite quickly in the non-conference portion of things, and then they slow things down in conference. But right now for San Diego State, 115th of the country in terms of total possessions per game, but last 5 games they've been playing at a clip of about 5 possessions per game fewer than they did in their first 6 or so games of the season. And for San Diego State, you've got B.J. Davis, who's been leading the team with about 11.5 points per game, and this is a San Diego State team that's right now shooting 38.9% from 3. That's the top 25 mark in all of college basketball, but they've been sloppy with the ball outside the top 240 in terms of their ball security. Now, they're a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and this is a San Diego State team that has been able to do a solid job on the glass, top 125 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Meanwhile, for San Jose State, though, even though this team has been getting quite bludgeoned on the inside, they're outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're now shooting 37% for 3, with Kobe Garland being a nice go-to scorer. 4 boards, 4.5 assists, 19.5 points. He shoots 44% from 3-point range. And then you've got Ben Rosenborough along with Jermaine Washington combining for about 21.5 points per game. These two guys combined to shoot about 39% from 3-point range. You've been able to get some good production as well when he's been out there in Cedric Nananana, who's been able to give you 4.5 rebounds per game. And Rosenborough has been dealing with a little bit of an injury. I do think that he's probably going to be out of the full once again in this game, so that was factored in, but that said, a guy that has been dealing with a little bit of injury and should be good to go in this game is Adrian Myers. He's only played in 7 games, but when he's been out there, he's been able to give you 8 points per game, so a little bit of an addition there, and I do think that that's going to be just enough for San Jose State to be able to hold in there with San Diego State. I do think that they start to dial back that tempo, and San Jose State is a team that is very much at home playing at a slower tempo, so did set my line at a 9.5 at 10 plus. We'll take those points with San Jose State, and I'm in on the under as well. 647, 648 on the card. It is Loyola Marymount playing us a Pacific. Let me be specific. That Pacific is a 5.5 point underdog. 137.5 to 138.5 is the total, and I said Loyola Marymount is a 5-point favorite, so at 5.5, that is my buy point on Pacific. It's a Pacific defense that has actually been quite good, and for Pacific, this is a team that has dialed it back quite a bit with regards to their tempo. They're about 286th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, you've got a Loyola Marymount team that is really not going to be pushing tempo as well. They're about 215th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Loyola Marymount has been a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Pacific, I do think that they find a way to be able to hold in this game with Elias Rolfe being able to take it over. 16.5 points, 6.5 boards at 6'7", shoots 41.5% from 3. Pacific, not necessarily a great 3-point shooting team at about 32.5%, but they're a top 100 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, top 55 team in terms of free throw shooting percentage as well. And for Pacific, it's all about taking care of the ball a little bit better. They're outside the top 285 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but you've got a Loyola Marymount team that is not necessarily going to do the most supreme job in terms of generating turnovers, and it's a Loyola Marymount team that has been outside the top 180 in terms of rebound percentage as well. So you do have a few issues with that regard. Now, for this Loyola Marymount team, they do now have their full allotment of pieces back in the fold as well, as they've been dealing with quite a few injuries. Jan Vide being the main of them, him being able to give you 14 plus points per game. I think that that is very big. And then you've been able to have MJ Amy be able to step up in a big way. He's been really your top scorer right now with about 15 points, 4 boards from 3-point range. He shoots 39% from 3. Rodney Brown also throws in their 15 points on his 40% 3-point shooting for Loyola Marymount. They themselves outside the top 200 in terms of ball security, but in a late game spot, Loyola Marymount, they shoot 65.2% the free throw line. That is a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball, and I do think that this is going to be a game that's close enough for late game fouling. Marymount, top 75 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, so I think they get a bit of a slog of a game here. So I total 135.5. I like the under, and with Pacific at 5.5 plus, I'm going to be willing to take those points. 649, 650 on the card. Washington State is going to be on on the road facing up against Seattle, and Seattle does find themselves as a favorite of 4.5 points. 141.5 is the total, and with Seattle, I set them as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number with Washington State. One thing that they're doing a very good job of, they are not allowing teams to be able to get second and third chances. Now, Washington State is also not going to be taking the ball away from you. They're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they themselves 232nd in terms of ball security in a road/court environment. That goes way down. That goes outside the top 275, as they've been turning the ball over 20% of their possessions when they've been away from home. But if you look at percentage of missed shots that become an offensive rebound for opponents, Washington State is fifth. Only 21.2% of opponents' missed shots do become an offensive rebound, so that's going to be big. But now you've got a Seattle team that has been a top 55 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Seattle pretty solid on the glass as well. They're a top 150 team with regards to rebound percentage as well. Not necessarily a team that's going to give you a lot of second and third chances, but Seattle has been very good in terms of taking care of the ball as well as being able to generate those turnovers. They're a top 45 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Seattle has seen some regression with their three-point shooting. They're now about a country average 34.5% three-point shooting team, but Brady Maldonado, 98% free throw shooter, 41% three-point shooter, gives you about 16 points, pair of steals per game. Love what he's able to do. John Suckio, Will Hembold, these two guys have been able to combine for about 25.5 points per game between the two of them. Shoot about 32.5% to 33.5% from three-point range. And Hembold, he's been able to give you nearly 3 blocks per contest as well. And then on the flip side, you got a Washington State team that is going to be breaking glass in case of emergency, as Ace Glass has been the ace for the team. 15.5 points, pair of assists. He shoots 37.5% for three. And Washington State now up to about 35.5% three-point shooting. We've seen their offense be a little bit sporadic, though, with all those turnovers. And Washington State has really dialed back their tempo from past seasons. Seattle's actually the more up-tempo team in this case, right around about 157th in terms of total possessions per game. Washington State is down to about 218th. And with Washington State, you've had Emil Yahoo along with Thomas Thradson be able to combine for about 20 points per game. Thradson, 4.5 boards. He shoots about 32% for three. And Yarlow, he's been able to shoot 44% from three-point. And Ryhard Varvers has been a nice 6-man, 9.5 points on 39% three-point shooting. But I do think that in the end, the turnover is just going to be too costly for this Washington State team. And I do think that Seattle going to be able to do a pretty rock-solid job on defense. But I do think that Washington State starts to dial up that tempo a little bit more as well. So I said my total 143.5. I like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 7 here with Seattle. 651, 652 on the card. San Francisco is on the road against Oregon State, and Oregon State does find themselves as a underdog here of 4.5 to 5.5 points. 142.5 to 143.5 is the total, and with San Francisco, I did set them as a favorite here of only 2.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Oregon State. I still believe that Corvallis is a really good environment, and I do believe that this team is going to be able to find a way to be able to hold in there against a San Francisco team that has been, shall we say, suspect in terms of taking care of the ball. This is a San Francisco team that is still doing a pretty rock-solid job on defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're about 116th in all of college basketball, and for Oregon State, it has been getting a little bit grody for them, 224th in the country with that regard, and I do think that there's going to be tons of dead possessions really on both sides, because I mentioned San Francisco not taking care of the ball. You do have an Oregon State team that they themselves have been having their issues. San Francisco outside the top 100 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. With Oregon State, they are hovering more around about 273rd, but this is also an Oregon State team that's been shooting it much better from three-point range when they've been at home rather than away from home. Away from home, Oregon State only shooting in that neighborhood about 31% from three-point range. When they get to Corvallis, they shoot more like 36.7% from the outside, and Malcolm Chrissy is a big reason why he's a little bit hit or miss, but he's been able to dial it up quite a bit more when he's been at home. For Oregon State, you've got Josiah Lake and Des White as the main two scorers right now. White about 11 points on 37% three-point shooting, and then Lake is just doing it all. 2 steals, 4 assists, 5 boards, 14 points per game. Only shoots about 31.5% for three-point. For a team as a whole, they shoot about 34.5% from the outside, but with Oregon State, they're not going to give themselves any sort of second and third chances. They are outside the top 330 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, for San Francisco, you do have nice versatility in the former top 75 recruit in Bookie Cook, who has stepped up, giving the team about 10 points, 5.5 boards, pair of assists, a steal, a block, shoots 42.5% from three, and then Tyrone Riley now shooting 46.5% from the outside with about 11.5 points per game. And for San Francisco, they're a good interior defense, top 50 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're not really going to force the issue at all. With Oregon State, they have that kryptonite of turning the ball over a ton. Oregon State should be able to have more clean possessions against a San Francisco team that's outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And San Francisco outside the top 150 in terms of their own offensive rebound percentage. So I do think that you get sort of a make it a take it sort of game, semi-total at a 138.5. So I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under, and anything north of 3, going to be willing to take those points with Oregon State. 653, 654 on the card. New Mexico, they're going to be on the road against Boise State, and Boise State have 4.5 to a 5.5 point favorite. 146.5 and 145.5 are your total, and with this total, I set mine at a 142.5. I do like the under. Both of these teams do a very good job in terms of limiting teams offensively. With New Mexico, it's with turnovers, 41st in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Boise State, top 5 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Teams are grabbing less than 21% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and for New Mexico, a little bit hit or miss from three-point range at about 33.5%, but you've been able to have the non-D1 transfer and Jake Hall step up in a big way, 14.5 points. He shoots 40% from three-point range. The other of your top 4 scorers all shoot less than 33% from 3, but Antonio Chal has stepped up with some versatility, 10.5 points, 3.5 boards, nearly a block per contest while shooting 38% from three-point range. It is a New Mexico team that's been rock solid on defense, and really both of these teams have been not great on defense, but they've been good enough, I think is the right term, on defense. As for Boise State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are checking in 76th. New Mexico, they are 62nd, and for Boise State, it does feel like Dylan Andrews has been, shall we say, a little bit of a subtraction, despite the fact that he's given the team plenty of production with regards to his offense. For Mr. Andrews, he's been able to give the team right around about 10.5 points, 4 assists per game, but it just feels like things are flowing through him a little bit too much. He only shoots 30.5% from 3. Team as a whole, they shoot 35% from 3 with Andrew Meadow showing off good versatility at 6'7", 12.5 points on 43% three-point shooting. Drew Fielder, he stands right around about 6'8", 6'9", and he's been shooting about 33.5% from 3 with 13.5 points, 5 rebounds per game as well. And for Boise State, even though they do such a great job of not allowing second and third chances, nobody gives you over 5.2 rebounds per game. Thing is, you've got 4 different guys. They give you between 4.8 and 5.2 rebounds per game, so very well-rounded with that regard. It is a Boise State team that's about country average in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Not a team that's really going to take away the ball too much outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And with Boise State hovering right around 200th with regards to ball security, I do think that that's going to be helping out New Mexico in this case. But again, with Boise State having all those guys on the inside, and Boise State being a nice controlled team, 257th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, I think that this is going to be a lower tempo game that does allow this Boise State team to not get out of sorts and be able to get the job done at home. And New Mexico about 147th in terms of total possessions per game. So made a total of 142.5. I like the under, and with Boise State, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6 with them. And that was the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board, so now we hit the bonus.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306, 615, 306, 616. You've got Vermont. They're going to be on the road against Princeton. Princeton is a home underdog of 1.5 points. 138 to 138.5 is the total, and set a total here of a 135.5. I'm going to be taking a shot on the under. We've got 2 teams that are just very slow. With Princeton, they're outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game. Vermont is 333rd, and recognize that Vermont has had a tough time guarding the 3-point line. They're outside the top 280 with their overall 3-point shooting percentage on defense, with team shooting over 35% against them. But this Princeton team is not the offense that we've seen in the past. Outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, their top scorer through their first 6 games in Dalen Davis has not been seen for over a month. You've had to have Jack Stanton along Jackson Hickey, who combined for about 24.5 points per game, headline things. And these 2 guys do combine to shoot about 40% from 3-point range, but teams as a whole shoot 32.5% from 3. And with Princeton, we all know that they pride themselves on shooting it from 3. They're outside the top 225 in terms of ball security. They're outside the top 3 in terms of generating turnovers. Now, with Princeton, they're not allowing teams to grab a lot of second and third chances. They've been a top 35 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so they're limiting the amount of possessions in games. But it's just hard to feel good about this offense with the way that they have tumbled downward. I'm willing to lay it with Vermont, as I did set them as a 5.5 point favorite. This Princeton team as well outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And with this Vermont team, they've been shooting about 35% for 3, but they really specialize on the inside. They're a top 50 team with regards to that 2-point shooting percentage, with Gus Yeldon, who missed the first 3 games of the season, stepping in, give the team 17.5 points, 4.5 boards. He shoots 41% from 3 now. With Vermont, they're much like Princeton. They're a good team in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Top 40 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage, outside the top 3 in terms of grabbing their own missed shots as an offensive rebound, and it's a make it a take a sort of team. Vermont, top 50 team in terms of taking care of the ball, fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense. So it's a very much slow, controlled game, but I think that the TJs step up in a big way. TJ Hurley and TJ Long combined for 27.5 points per game for this Vermont team, and with Hurley, he's been able to shoot 38.5% from 3-point range. You've been able able to get good production out of Noah Barnett, who doesn't really shoot it from three, but 6.5 points, 4 rebounds. It feels like this Vermont team is getting better on defense as well after it was very, very suspect to begin the season. They've given up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games, and it's a little bit more of what you're accustomed to from this Vermont team. And with this Princeton bunch shooting just 31.9% from three-point range against D1 competition, I do think that Vermont going to be able to hold them down and get the job done. So my line at 135.5 with the total, and on the under, and I'm on the lay of Vermont. 36-6-17, 36-6-18. Southeast Louisiana is on the road against Incarnate Word, and the Word is a favorite of 8.5 points. And the total on this game, it is 139 to 139.5. Set a total of 138.5. I do like the under. You've got two teams that are very much looking to play very slow and very controlled. Incarnate Word is 327th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. Southeast Louisiana is 323rd, and Southeast Louisiana just does not shoot it well from three. 358th of the country, shooting 26.4% from three-point range. While the Word is a solid three-point shooting team, especially at home, they are about 74th in terms of overall three-point shooting percentage. That goes up to 40.8% at home. So I'm willing to lay with Incarnate Word. I did set them as a 10.5 point favor. Recognize that the Word is outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but even with how slowly they play, Saj Savosky along Devin Bailey, these two guys have been able to combine for about 39 points per game. Bailey shoots 38.5% from 3, 37 on Stavetsky, and then Harrison Reed. I know that he's out with a little bit of injury. He's a bit more of an ancillary piece, but with his 7.5 points per game, he shoots 55% from three-point range, and this team should be able to do a nice job down low. Jordan Pike, Harold Woods, they've been able to combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game between the two of them, 21 points per game, and Woods, who comes over from Northeastern as a very versatile piece, has been able to give the team a little bit of a steal per contest as well. Meanwhile, for Southeast Louisiana, this is still a team that isn't terrible with regards to their defense. I'm not going to call them amazing with regards to their defense, as they did lose Brody Woodbury, one of their top rebounders from a season ago, but still a top 100 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They've been a top 225 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. They're now just getting really gashed on the inside. They do grab a rebound when they get gashed, but still, they are outside the top 275 towards opponent's two-point shooting percentage, and they've got Jeremy Alizi along with Isaiah Gaines combining for 22 points per game. Lone two guys that average double figures, and they combine to shoot between the two of them less than 5% from three-point range. I'm not even kidding when I say that. They've got one guy in Peter Heschenmeister who's been able to shoot 37.5% from three with 8 points per game, but their top 7 scorers, lone guy that shoots above 33% from the outside. Just not a lot going with regards to our perimeter offense. The interior defense is taking a setback, though they are a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I think they get a sloppy game where Southeast Louisiana just does not do their part with the total. So at a 139 plus, I'm in on the under, and with the Word, I'm willing to lay up to 10 with them. 36-6-19, they're at 6-6-20. Northwestern is going to be playing us to Howard. Howard is an underdog of 19.5 to 20.5 points. 145.5 is the total, and I made a total of a 139.5, so I'm going to be in on this total under. You've got a Northwestern team that is playing at a little bit of a slower pace, not necessarily super slow, but about 223rd in terms of total possessions per game. Howard has really dialed it back. They're down to about 236th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and both of these teams really good with regards to perimeter defense. You've got a Howard team that's allowing teams to shoot 26.7% from three-point range away from home. That is a top 20 market off college basketball. Northwestern 17th in terms of overall opponent's three-point shooting percentage at 28.3%. Northwestern allowing more than 20 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home, and you got our team that's having a tough time taking care of the ball. 293rd of the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Big reason why I did set Northwestern as a 21.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay the number. Northwestern top 25 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and for Howard, you have a nice go-to guy in Bryce Harris who's been able to give you 20 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists per game, and he's shooting 38.5% from three. For a team as a whole, they shoot 35% from the outside, but he and Cedric Taylor has only played in 3 games. He's been able to average 12.5 points, 6 rebounds per game when he's been out there, and he missed like the first 9 or so games of the season. These are the lone 2 guys that have been able to give you any sort of rebounding whatsoever. They just don't have a lot of size down low, which helps out a Northwestern team that, let's call it what it is, they haven't necessarily been the most stout team down low either. In Northwestern, they are going to be able to exploit a Howard team that is outside the top 250 in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage. With regards to Northwestern, you've got Nick Martinelli give you a 22 points, 6.5 boards. He shoots 60% from three-point range. Rest of the team leaving something to be desired. They shoot as collective about 32% from 3 points, but this is a Northwestern team that is a top 65 team team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. They just do a bad job on the boards. They are outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but again, Howard really doesn't have a lot of size to grab those second and third chances, and with the way that Howard turns the ball over, I do think that Northwestern finds a way to get the job done in a relatively controlled game. Semi-total 139.5. I like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 21 here with Northwestern 306-621, 306-622. Albany is on the road against South Carolina. South Kakalaki is a favorite of 20.5 points on this game, 146.5 to a 148.5, and I did set a total of a 140.5. I do like the under. South Carolina team has relatively mid-tempo in terms of total possessions per game, 217th. Albany, they find themselves 211th, but have an Albany team as having a very difficult time taking care of the ball for one, and two, not shooting it very well from three-point range, 294th in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Goes up to 45.5% at home, down to less than 29% away from home. And South Carolina is a team that they themselves have been interesting because they do a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. South Carolina, top 40 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot 29.9% from three-point range. That is 307th in all of college basketball. Now for Albany, you've been able to have some good versatility in the backcourt out of Amir Lindsey. 4.5 assists, 16.5 points per game. He shoots 37.5% for three. Throws in there a little bit over a steal per contest. And Jaden Kempson, about 2 steals, 11.5 points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists. He's been a nice helper as well. But for Albany, this team just does not find a way to get to the free throw line. They're outside the top 330 in terms of percentage of possessions that end in a free throw. This team has also been getting blitz inside. They're outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 275 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. And this is a South Carolina team that is doing a really nice job in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances. This South Carolina team is a top 75 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, with Mongolia Mike doing a bit of everything, 12 points, 6.5 boards. He only shoots about 29.5% from three. Michi Johnson, 33% three-point shooter. He is the only out of their top 6 scorers that shoot at least 29.5% from three-point range, but 3.5 assists per game. You've got a South Carolina team that, with them taking care of the ball, they also don't generate turnovers. They're outside the top 330 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they're not allowing any sort of outside shots. They are allowing teams to shoot 28.5% from three-point range. That is a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. And with South Carolina, they've been good with their interior offense, a top 35 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. As a result, I did set South Carolina here as a 22.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 20.5 and like the under semi-total at a 140.5, 306-623, 306-624. South Carolina State is going to be on the road against Tennessee, and Tennessee, well, I see that they are a 46.5 point favorite with a total of 147.5. And this South Carolina State team is grody. They're outside the top 285 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. If there's one thing that they're doing okay, they actually are about 185th in the country in terms of their own 3-point shooting percentage, but it doesn't do them a whole lot of good when they're just turning the ball over left and right, 311th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. But Tennessee has had a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball as well, so I did set a line here of a 42. I am going to be willing to take the points as Tennessee has had a little bit of a tough time losing Zakai Ziegler. Now they're about 228th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, I will say that with Mr. Jacoby Gillespie, he's been able to come in and he's been able to give the team good production, 17.5 points, 5.7 assists per game, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. And JP Estrella, so with a little bit of injury, when he's been out there, he's been rock solid, 10.5 points, 4.5 boards. Nate Ament, he's been solid. I don't think that he's quite lived up to the billing quite yet, but 15.5 points, steal and a half, only shoots about 30% from three, but 7 rebounds per game. And you just know that this Tennessee defense, night in and night out, they're absolutely going to be bringing it, and they face off against the South Carolina State team that they do look to play at a pretty brisk pace, about 90th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Tennessee, they're more of a mid-tempo team at about 203rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I did set a total of 144. I do like the under mainly because I just don't think that South Carolina State does their part with the total, though you do have Owen Bronson Jr., who's been able to give you about 11.5 points. He shoots 38% from three-point range, and this has been a team that's been dealing with some injuries. Cameron Clark, who transfers in from Cal State Bakersfield, he missed the first 3 or so games, 8.5 points, 5.5 rebounds. He helps the team out down low. And Christopher Parker, when he's been out there on the floor, and he should be good to go in this game, supply 8 points, 7 rebounds per game. So he's been able to give a little bit of versatility there with South Carolina State. This is a team that's just getting dump trucked with regards to the rebounds, as they are well outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage. You're outside the top 350 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but they've been about a country average team in terms of generating turnovers as well. I think that Tennessee should be a big favorite, but man, 46 plus points. This has just gone gone a little bit too far in what might be a look-ahead spot going into conference play. So by total 144, so like the under, and I do like the points here of South Carolina State, and wrap things up with 306, 625, 306, 626. Nebraska plays host to New Hampshire. New Hampshire, a sizable underdog here of 30.5 points. 144.5 is the total. I did set my line here at a 26, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with New Hampshire. Once again, I do think that you might be finding yourself in a little bit of a look-ahead spot here with the Nebraska team that has been very good defensively, top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Very mid-tempo team as well. 172nd in terms of total possessions per game for New Hampshire, very much the same. They're hovering in that neighborhood about 208th in terms of total possessions per game, but New Hampshire doing a solid job taking care of the ball. Top 150 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. It's a bunch that's leaving quite a bit of something to be desired from the outside. They're only shooting 30.9% for three, hovering right around 300 with that regard, but you've got a trio of guys in Jack Graham, Belial El-Shakiri, and Kajan Robinson who have been able to combine for just under 36 points per game, and Graham has been able to shoot about 35.5% from three-point range. Robinson, 2.2 assists, so less than a turnover and a half per game. You don't have a lot of facilitation with this team, but with New Hampshire, I do think that they're going to do an okay job on the glass. They've been a top 225 team with regards to rebound percentage, and they've been a top 175 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. They don't knock down their own twos. They're well outside the top 300 with that regard. So Nebraska, with ranked Mass, they should certainly be able to win that battle down low with Mass. He's been one of the most versatile players in all of college basketball, 17 points, 7 boards, 3 assists. He's shooting 40% from three-point, and then Price Stanford shooting 38.5% for three with 16 points, 5 rebounds. He's been rock solid there. Nebraska doesn't really give themselves a lot of second chances outside the top 250 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they keep teams off the free throw line, top 10 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis, and they force things to the outside. In terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from three, they're a top 10 team in all of college basketball, and teams are only shooting 30% from three against them, and New Hampshire, again, they are shooting right around about 300th in the country with regards to their own three-point shooting percentage, so I do think that Nebraska finds a way to get the job done, but again, could this be a little bit of a look-ahead spot going into Big Ten play, and with this New Hampshire team doing the little things relatively okay, I think that that's just enough for them to hold in there. I think that there's a bit of regression coming for that Nebraska three-point shooting defense as well. Some might all 146. I do like the over, and I like the points here with New Hampshire, and that wraps things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks to Tanner Kern, who does great work over at DraftKings, for joining me in the last segment. Coming at you guys every single day on this podcast with picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
Ranked number 1 in innovation 11 consecutive years, Arizona State University isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Learn from notable clinical and research faculty. Online, that's a degree better. Explore programs at asuonline.asu.edu.